Don't you worry, the clip's about to begin, but don't forget to subscribe. Or else, don't make me turn this website around.
Keith in Florida, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Jimmy and Katie. How are you guys doing?
Good, thanks.
I don't know why Katie is lying, because the world is on fire, so there's no way she's good. But maybe it was just as a pleasantry for the beginning of the conversation. I'll tell you the truth. The world is on fire! And actually, Colorado's literally on fire. If the light was out, you would literally just see smoke behind me right now. But the sun has gone down. And it's not a green screen, you freaking assholes who tell people it's a green screen. Anyway,
it is a green screen. I saw it on the show.
I am not too caffeinated. I don't drink caffeine literally ever. To the people in the live chat who keep mentioning it, I can't have caffeine due to a medical condition. So this is just me. Anyway, Keith, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so my mother is a Theta healer. Are you familiar at all with Theta healing?
I'm
very mildly. Katie's not.
Yeah. It's not to be confused with Thetans. Yeah, so basically
it's the hand stuff, right?
This idea that you can... I'm sorry, I think I talked over you.
No, yeah, it's the hand stuff, right? Where you're using your hands over a body and you're transferring your healing powers into them or some shit like that.
Yeah, the way my mother described how the healing seminars go, it really sounds more like a peer support group with a layer of mysticism on top of it, and they charge hundreds of dollars.
Great. So they dropped the Jesus, but they kept the rest.
Yeah.
What's your question surrounding this?
Well, so my mother is convinced that this is real and spending hundreds of dollars on lessons to be a Theta healer, and is charging people money for Theta healing over webcams. How do I convince her that none of this is real? You need to stop taking other people's money, and you need to stop wasting your own.
I'll let Katie go again first, and then I'm going to probably talk over her and disagree with her halfway through.
Because you got nothing, mate. That's why.
Let me mansplain Theta healing to you, Katie. I'm going to actually, real quick, put Katie full screen up, because I'm going to step off for a moment, and I'll be right back. Do it. What are you doing, David? Put her full screen. There we go.
I think it's very difficult. I think it's very difficult to change people's minds on things they really passionately believe, especially when they're really emotionally and financially invested in it. I think, not knowing much about Theta healing, I would kind of have two angles. One would be to show that there are other people who believe they can heal in another way, and they believe it just as much, and they have just as much evidence. Because when you say to her, "Oh, this doesn't work," I'm sure that she'll say, "Oh no, because I've seen it work. I've seen someone get better from doing it, from the thing." Or my friend tells me that they got better from it, or I felt better from it. And you could explain to her the placebo effect, and you could explain how sometimes there's a coincidence, and sometimes people will heal from conditions naturally anyway. And also, they might be going to the doctor at the same time, and that also might cause it. But when you've got that kind of when she's got that kind of anecdotal evidence, it's going to be hard to just say, "Oh, that's the placebo effect." It's kind of not going to really contribute anything. But if you also say to her, "Well, there are other groups who have other healing methods. The Christian healers, and there's faith healers of all kinds of different things." And they all say the same things as you're saying. And maybe you should just ask your question, tell her to ask herself, how would she differentiate herself from another faith healer who's obviously wrong because they're not the same one as her? Pick some faith healer who she just agrees is just nonsense, and then say, well, how are you different? Explain to me the differences between you and this other person. And I think that often that at least gets people thinking about like what is the difference between what I believe and this other nonsense belief. And sometimes they'll have some, like, I think lots of these kind of like culty things have like pre-built defenses, a bit like how, Scientology has already primed everyone to hate psychologists or whatever, they hate therapists or something. Psychiatrists, they hate something. But I think that, there's so many different types of faith healers. There'll be one that she's not prepared. There's not some built-in story to defend from it, and then get her to like ask herself what the difference is, or explain to you what the difference is.
Yeah.
I did.
Go ahead, Keith.
I did try to do that with, because when I asked her, like, how do you know? And one of the things that she brought up was this testing thing that they do. And what it is after their session, they point the person that they were healing north and say, show me your yes, and they lean forward and say yes, and then show me your no, and they lean backwards and say no. And supposedly this is compulsory. It's not intentional. There's no intent behind it. You have to do it. It's you're forced to do it by this clearing of your something. I can't even remember what it was called.
For not being Satan, it is so
I'm just like, well, Pentecostals.
So, like, could you like say to? I mean, obviously, she's paying a lot of money to get these lessons, and perhaps you could say, like, obviously, I'm completely untrained and I know nothing, but like my friend is here, and I'm gonna like wave my hand over and be like, "Pow, you're cured. Now, can you lean towards the north and say yes?" And they'll do it, and then like. So what's the difference? What's gone on here? Why are you paying thousands of pounds for this when I've achieved exactly the same result in 3 seconds right in front of you? I think they often have all these like layers of like, well, this is evidence because then this happens and then this happens and this happens. And it's just a bit of enough of a web of nonsense for them that their brain just stops rationalizing. But then if you can just recreate that exact thing right in front of her and say, well, what's the difference?
With a lot of these things, Keith, I think focusing on the actual held belief might not be the method to go. When you learn about things like street epistemology and the like, what it comes down to is don't tell them so many reasons why it's wrong. Ask them questions and then point to parallels. So one of the things that I do with religious people is they tell me their belief. I ask them how they got to it. At a certain point, we get to the point that it's faith, and then we explore whether faith is a reasonable method to get to truth. And we talk about other examples of people using faith. So she's talking about she has this test with the North Star. Mormons have a feeling-based test where it's like, ask if the Bible is true and you'll feel a burning in your bosom, but it might not come right away and it might come in a different way, but blah, blah, blah. So they talk about these things that test to confirm. The Scientologists have the cans you hold and it'll tell when the stress has been cleared, even though it doesn't do any of that stuff. So all of these people have these tests, and you talk about how and why that test would be an affirmative. And you talk about the parallels, and you talk about, okay, well, people with this experience that is similar to yours have a contradictory. So how do we find out? And this is the good question usually to ask. You believe this on this basis, somebody believes this on this basis, and it's contradictory. And you have to figure out what the contradictory position is. What is the mechanism by which we figure out which one of you is correct? And you're never going to have the conversation where at the end of that conversation, even like we saw earlier with the guy who said his mind was changed, the guy called in after the conversation that happened because of all the reflection and thought he put in to say that Katy had changed his mind. In the moment and in the conversation, even if you succeed ultimately in changing her mind, she's not going to concede that to you. People are defensive when their beliefs are put under a microscope. What you want to do is ask the question that she's going to think about all fucking week long after you ask. Yes. That's the thing that's teaching. Basically, you're going to be sort of low-key showing the questions you have, trying to appear earnest and honest, even if sometimes it's hard to, trying to appear like you earnestly want to know. The statement I use, which I do want to know, but at this point I have little confidence anyone's going to challenge it. But one of the statements I use is, between the two of us, either one of us is right, both of us are wrong, or both of us are wrong. Those are the two options. One of us could be correct, or both could be wrong. We can't both be correct, and I guess that's the only third option. And oftentimes I will start with, can we agree with that? And sometimes it's good to start there, because sometimes they don't even agree with that, and you have to walk them through that. Why both things can't be right if they're contradictory. We can't both be right if we have opposing views. And so then you go through that, then you agree on it, and then you take the next step. But a lot of times that'll take a person's guard down, and it is already telling a person you're going to actively listen, but also projects the expectation that they're going to actively listen to you too. Ask more questions than you make statements, and you will be in the gold.
Definitely finding a starting point where you both agree is, it's a really good start. I mean, it's easy to do with someone who's at least prepared to listen. Sometimes people will deny all the way down to, the most ridiculous points, but most people, you'll find a point where you agree like that, and then you can build up from there, and you find a point where they have to address a contradiction.
My dad, if you challenge him hard enough on his belief, will then go straight to stupid solipsistic arguments, and will literally be like, well, now that my belief is challenged and I can't prove evidence, I'm going to jump to this, like, I don't even have proof we exist kind of bullshit. Yeah. And so then it's like, I'm just not going to agree with absolutely anything, which shows the arrogance of a position. If your position is either I'm right or the whole universe isn't real, you're kind of a dick.
That's a brilliant false dichotomy.
Yeah.
All right. Real quick, I just want to say, I have a feeling my mother would be in one of those positions. Would be one of those people who would say, "Yes, we can both be right," because I think that if she's not a pantheist, she's probably on the edge of that. I'll keep this in mind, and next time that I get a chance to talk with my mother, and see if I can walk her away from that, because.
Ask questions. That's the best way.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Keith. Anything else before we let you go?
No, that's all. Thanks much for taking my call. I hope you guys have a great rest of your show.
I see you're in Florida, so I just want to say either congrats on determining the election, or I hate you for determining the election. I'll let you know which one it is in about 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'll be on the same page.
All right, good deal. Good deal. Let's see you, Keith.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for checking out this clip for The Line. While you're here, hit that like button, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and then share this with that bitter uncle of yours who loves talking about the good old days.